welcome to another session of Power Platform First Aid with myself, Matt Weston, and my colleague, Peter Veenstra. I'm Matt Weston, I'm the CEO of Vantage 365 and a Business Applications MVP, and I'm going to be your host. I'm going to be asking the questions. I'm joined by my colleague today, Peter. Peter, would you like to say hello?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this third session already. The time is flying, isn't it? It's only 3 months ago since we've done the first one. And hey, the sessions have been great fun. As Matt already mentioned, my name is Peter Veenstra. I'm the head of Power Platform at Vantage 365. And well, like today, I answer lots of questions from lots of people about all sorts of things in relation to the Power Platform.
Yeah, we've had some great questions as well over the previous months. Everything from how to actually get started within the Power Platform through to some of the really deep technical how do I type questions that I think even have stretched you, Peter. It's certainly given us some good conversations, hasn't it?
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing the questions that we get, and it's in general. I think if you look at the Power Platform, there are lots of people who are just starting. And they will ask quite often of, hey, I'm stuck. What do I do to get unstuck? The funny thing I also find is that Microsoft has got this Power Up program, which of course is a great introduction into the Power Platform, but quite often people basically need help. And we're getting a lot of people basically from that program who then ask us, hey, how do we do whatever it may be? And yes, that's good to see. I think it means that we're filling the gap in the community, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, on that, we'll dive into our questions because we've got some really good questions that again have been submitted by you. So thank you, all of you out there who submitted questions. If you do have questions that you'd like us to try and get through to in this next 30 minutes, then please do post them into chat on whether you're watching on YouTube, LinkedIn, X, or Facebook, wherever you're watching. Please do post your questions and we'll try as best as we can to get round to those. If we don't get through to them today, we will cover them in our next session or we'll respond to you individually as well, just to make sure that you do get those pointers in the right direction.
I think an important point over there, Matt, is that if you're, for example, following on, let's say, YouTube or LinkedIn or whatever, make sure that you follow us, press that subscribe button. Hey, isn't that what everybody does anyway? Press that subscribe button over there, somewhere below there.
Yeah, don't forget the like as well.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that you find that if you follow us, basically, then the next session, you'll automatically be notified of, hey, there is a next one coming up. So it will help. Then when we answer your question, you're not going to miss it.
Brilliant. Okay, so here we go. Question number one then. This has been submitted by Simon. So thank you, Simon, for submitting this question. So I'm creating my Power BI report. And when I add my visuals to show a graph, my number column only shows as a count of the column. How do I fix this?
This is actually a really, it's one of those silly things, isn't it? You think this just should work. And it can be a real battle. And the real problem over here, it's actually quite simple, or at least what I think it will be, is that when you've got data and you're importing that data into the Power BI environment, quite often, imagine if, for example, you've got your data stored in SharePoint or wherever you've got it stored, it doesn't really matter. You import the data, now you get that thing that looks like a bit like a table inside Power BI. Now you're going to add that graph, you're selecting the columns, and it will say that it's just counting the number of records that you've got of a certain value or whatever. So you've got your X and your Y's in that graph, and you think you've done it all right, but it does not want to switch from count of the column. What you've basically got as a problem over there is that if that field is a text field, the only thing it can do to turn it into a number is the number of records that you've got. Now, imagine if it's a number field, or you think it's a number field, you might add that to your Power BI visual, and the only thing you're going to see is that it will count the number of records of that number value. What you actually want to do is you want to get the value of that record, or you want to get the number of it rather than the textual count of it. And all you have to do basically is you go into that table, you reformat that column to be a number or a date. I mean, you can have the same kind of thing for dates as well. And now you've got a number. If you then add it to that visual, you'll actually find that the graph is straight away building up. And you might find your ups and your downs in your little line that appears over there. And that's pretty much all there should be to it. And that should just work. If it then still doesn't work, hey, contact me and we'll have another look. But I'm 90% sure this is what your problem is.
Okay, I mean that's interesting, isn't it? I mean that's certainly looking at it from a Power BI perspective. I mean I'm just starting to really find my feet with Power BI. It's always been the chink in my armor, but you've also got the data manipulation in Power Query, haven't you, as well, that sits behind the scenes?
Yeah. The thing is that personally, I've always found that there are two ways of dealing with data in Power BI. You find lots of people use the Power BI desktop UI to click on the buttons, is what I would say. That basically makes the tool into a low-code platform, doesn't it? But actually, if you go in the code that sits behind there, personally, as a developer, I prefer that option because I can actually see what happens. I can see what it's trying to do. So when I do a sort of my data or whatever, I would just start typing. I just find it easier. I do see sometimes people that just click on the buttons and sort the data, and hey, that just becomes a step. It's probably easier, it's probably quicker, but you might not 100% know what you've just selected because there are some default values, for example, that you've already, the ordering or something like that might default to ascending or descending. Doesn't really matter which one is the default, but you didn't select it.
Okay, interesting. But I suppose there's also an argument for, even before we get to Power BI, making sure that we've got our data types right on the data source as well.
Yeah, definitely. This is where I would always say, when you do Power BI work, make sure that your data is right. Now, of course, the difficulty is when you get started with Power BI, do you know what right is? And that, I think, is the big hurdle. This is where sometimes people need a bit of help with that, or you just need to build up your experience. And the more times you've hit that brick wall, the quicker you learn the next time.
Yep, I can certainly vouch for that. I'm living proof of that. That's exactly how I've learned Power BI. I've got it very, very wrong, and then I've had to go back. And ultimately, this is one of the big things for the Power Platform that I think really suits so many people, is that you can fail fast and then go back and then take some learnings from it, apply those learnings, and then ultimately you can make sure that you don't hit those same hurdles next time.
Yeah, definitely. Failing is pretty much the only way of learning, isn't it? Or see someone else fail.
Oh, absolutely. Watch me enough, and you'll learn lots of lessons.
Yep.
Brilliant. I mean, it's really nice that we've actually received a Power BI question this time around, because normally we only get Power Apps and Power Automate. So it's awesome that we've got something there to help diversify. Maybe one for the future is if anyone's got a question about Copilot Studio, then I'm putting you on the spot here, Peter, that we can then start to answer the questions around what was Power Virtual Agents as well.
Yeah, I think it sounds good. If there's any chat coming in during this session, we're happy to answer them.
Perfect. Question number 2. This is a fantastic question, and I know this is one that's close to your heart. The new Power Automate UI, I would like to use it, but I'm finding too many bugs. I can so relate to this. Should I give up on it?
Well, that's a difficult question, isn't it? And the thing is, I will not give you the careful answer today. I've had for a very long time, basically, where my favorite feature in the new UI has been that little thingy at the top where you can say, switch back to the classic. And that might sound really, really negative. I think basically that the initial release that has been out there has been not 100% great. There have been so many bugs. If I just name some easy examples of the emails that you might send, you want to have some formatting in it. You have HTML formatting in it, and you hit the save button, and the formatting is gone. I mean, those things are not good at all. That one is fixed, and this is why I'm mentioning these kind of things. Basically, they have been fixed, and I think we need to look at it from a perspective of, yes, there have been quite a few issues in it. They have been addressed. If I name another one where A typical action you would, or a typical trigger you would use is when an item or file has been modified. Um, the what basically the new UI did in the beginning is they forgot a certain switch in the settings, which basically meant that there is when you have a flow that starts with the get items or get the items when one is being modified, it would return that item as an array. Now you could imagine that if you've got a flow and you've edited it for the last 5 years in the old UI, now you're switching over to the new UI, you're hitting save, or you're creating a new flow and it uses that new trigger. It might basically take that one setting away, and now we're ending up with an array rather than a single item. Now the rest following steps in your flow, of course, they will fail because they expected an object rather than an array. That's going to go horribly wrong. Again, this one's been fixed. And that is the nice thing, where the new UI, there are lots of fixes coming through. I'm actually working together with the Microsoft development team, trying to get these bugs out of the way. And I think it's important to get rid of all of these bugs so that the UI becomes stable. And I think it is now getting to the point where, yes, there might still be a couple of things where we say, okay, that would be nice if that was different. But I don't think it's bad at the moment anymore. And I think it is time, I think, to start giving the new UI a second chance. Because I know that lots of people have been switching away from the new UI. So they basically just, gave up on it, didn't they? And I think it is important to realize, I think, that lots of people have just lost faith in the new UI and they just keep switching back to the old UI. Hey, I've been one of those. And I think it's very important that we have to start trying the new UI out. If we don't try the new UI out, Microsoft will struggle to fix all of these the issues. And I think all the critical issues, they have pretty much been sorted out. I think the only real issue that I would really like to see fixed is when you do the copy paste of actions. On actions that works, and it has worked for quite a while. But if you do it on a scope, for example, or an apply to each, where you've got multiple steps, where you want to copy in one go, that doesn't exist in the new UI yet. It's on its way, by the way. So hopefully we'll see that arrive in the next couple of weeks or whenever they do release it. I don't know exactly when they release it, but that will be high on the list because lots of people have been complaining about it. And that's probably an important thing to realize, that when people complain about it, Microsoft does something about it. And if you stay quiet and just go, nah, don't like it, nothing's ever going to change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm one of those who just kept switching back to Classic as soon as I started to hit any issues. I mean, you've been in the office with me when I've been exasperated, for want of a better word, about just some of the functionality not being there. I mean, I had a really interesting issue where when I was moving my cursor over the new canvas, my cursor would actually disappear. So it was almost like stealth flows. I just could not see what was going on. So I just constantly had to switch back to Classic. Now, I've been really lucky that you and I have been conversing a lot, and you've taken my feedback and given that back to the Microsoft team. You've been the conduit for a lot of people to get that feedback back. And it's really nice to see that these things are being fixed, actually being fixed really quickly as well.
Yeah, because a lot of this stuff basically might as well be quite difficult. And if we take it back to where this new UI comes from, it's just logic apps, isn't it? You would expect that if you have Power Automate, which is based on logic apps and now uses the same UI as logic apps, that should be quite a straightforward set of steps for Microsoft to pick up. But actually, this is where you can see that Power Automate has evolved a lot further than logic apps ever did, or ever has even. And then as we can basically get all these additions that have been added to Power Automate over the years, they all need to be re-implemented, or lots of them. All the ones that aren't part of the standard UI, hey, they're not going to be there. So copy paste of steps. That's one of those items that needed to be implemented. And Power Automate has always been more, I would say, end user focused than Logic Apps has been. Logic Apps has always been a bit more of a system administrator or developer, a core developer and pro developer. I mean.
Well, let's really focus on one of the big redeeming factors of the new interface. You cannot beat that expression editor now.
Yep.
So going away from the single line of text that you had to scroll across and just couldn't see anything, to being able to now have multiple lines that I can indent. Hallelujah that Microsoft have actually put that in at last.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is quite a nice nice improvement. And I think it's that expression editor could even be just the only reason. Well, not the only reason, but it's one of the big reasons for you to switch over and back to the modern UI.
Definitely, and I think certainly as we see more of these bugs get fixed, then absolutely it's going to be it is going to be an amazing experience. It's great that the work is being put in there and the time is being put in there. I think probably one of the big things, especially if people are new to the Power Platform, the user acceptance testing is all of us, all of you who, as Peter said earlier on, we're expected to use it, and if there's something in there that we don't like, then we do need that feedback. And certainly from the MVP community side of things, that is one of the big things that we do, is we feed back into the Microsoft engineering team. So at the end of today's session, we will share Peter's contact details. So if you want to feedback your own experiences within the modern interface, or you see any bugs or issues that haven't been picked up yet that you want to feed back to Peter so we can then feed it back, then please do so, because then you're helping everybody in the world who's now using this as a technology.
Yeah, it's a bit like creating your own custom connector, isn't it? And then sharing it with the rest of the world. You've put something together, and then the rest can make use of it. It's really good, I think.
Perfect, great. So, question number 3 then. Okay, this is again another interesting one. Hi, is there a way to change the address data source of the address input control in Power Apps? I want to use the autocomplete function of the Google Maps API.
That's a bit of a difficult one. Basically, the address input control uses by default the Bing API. Hey, the Bing Maps API actually is not that bad, I think. I don't think it's any worse than the Google API. And so what it basically will do is it will use the address information that it's got in that mapping system, and it will use that by default. If you want to switch that over to something else, then you do have an option there. There is, by default, it uses a setting called default, and it actually uses the Bing Map API. Now you can set that to the Bing Map API. So it's only got 2 values, but basically they point at the same thing, so it doesn't do much. But then there is still another one, and that is the Azure Map API. And so if you Google for Bing, sorry. Oh,
stay on brand.
Yeah, stay on the Microsoft brand, guys over there. So we need to, if you go to the Bing search engine and you search for Azure Maps, you will find, and quite quickly, a page that describes that whole API. And you could switch the control over to that. That's the only other option you've got. But then you end up in a more of an pro code development world where you can do other things. You might, I don't know if you can link that up somehow with Google, with the Google Maps API. It's something I would need to investigate. But it's something to investigate at least. So yes, there is an option to switch that over. I would hope that in the long term, that Microsoft would actually enable the Google Maps API there as well as an option, and then people can make the choice. But it's not there as a simple drop-down option available.
And so are there any options for people to create their own control?
Well, that's of course that's another option. What you could do is create a PCF control. So you create a complete custom code control, and that then can talk to anything you like, and that basically opens up the whole world. And I think that's probably a bit of a bigger discussion anyway, isn't it? If you want to do something that you can't do out of the box, code it. Okay, you might not have the skills to do it or whatever, but that is fine. And you can find someone else who could just develop that little control for you. You receive that control from them, and then they can, and then you can basically make use of that. And that's how you can enhance the Power Platform quite nicely. And it's basically one of the things that that we do as well within our company, of course, that when people ask for coded solutions, it's something we can pick up. Okay, I will always tell you, don't do it unless you have to. But that's an important thing, is that the no code option should be option number one. Of course, option number one is what is there out of the box, and you just use that if you can. And then if it's really important to you, switch over to a coded option, and then you've got available to you whatever you want, pretty much. There is no real limit anymore at that point to the Power Platform, is there? See, the low code platform that we've got, I think that already makes a lot possible. Now, the next thing, of course, is that if you need to do anything else that doesn't fit within that framework, you have to have an escape route. If that escape route is a coded solution, great, go for it. But try to avoid it, because it is something you will have to maintain. And I think that is potentially something you have to consider before you start doing the development work. So yeah, it's definitely something I think we need to consider as an option, I guess.
So how do people get started with the component framework then? What are the things they should be learning? What languages does it support?
Okay, so basically, for probably everybody who comes from that SharePoint background, I always like to compare these PCF controls with the SPFX framework, so the SharePoint framework, which modern SharePoint pages are built on. And it actually works in a fairly similar way. You've got your SPFX web part that you might want to add to SharePoint. In a similar way, you get a control where you can just you create a new project. You've got your JavaScript frameworks that can make use of it. You have a bit of CSS, and in short, you can do anything, because every website is made up of HTML text in some kind of weird format that they call HTML. Then you've got CSS, which is, I call it the big paint pot. So you can throw all sorts of different colors and shapes and whatever on your page. You can reshape it, whatever you like, and color it. So it's even maybe a packet of pencils, I guess, and you can color in your color by numbers or whatever.
Any web developers out there, please don't take offense that you're being compared to paint by numbers.
But hey, it's fine. So that's the CSS, that's the HTML. And you've got your JavaScript for all the dynamic bits where things need to happen and things that are maybe a little bit more complicated and need a little bit of coding. Well, the three of those you can do anything with. And that's what the PCF or SPFX controls in SharePoint both offer.
Perfect. So just as a learning resource for this, if you do want to learn more about the development side of Power Platform, check out PL400 on Microsoft Learn. That is the Power Platform Developer Associate certification material, and that will guide you through what the different development options are and how they generally work. It's a very interesting area. It's interesting to see how far you can expand the Power Platform. Right, we've just had a question coming on chat, so thank you, Kaylee, for this. And again, this is an interesting question. What are some of the common challenges that you face when automating business processes?
First challenge is understanding what the client wants. And even I think before that challenge even arrives, maybe, is making sure that the client understands what the challenge is that they want to have resolved. Most of the times when we speak with clients on that day number one, they don't really know yet what they want, and that's actually quite a challenge, because it means that if I say this is what you want, they probably go, okay, but that's not what I want to hear. I actually want to have an argument with. Argument is a bit of a big word, but it's you want to have that discussion where you can disagree with each other. You can come to an agreement at some point, and it means that you actually start to figure out what they really want. Because if you don't question what they're asking for, you're going to build a house, you're going to deliver that house, and now they want to get into the house, but you didn't put a door in it. That's a bit of a challenge. So we need to make sure that we actually get all the requirements right. And now, if you take us into things like Power Automate, there are a whole load of other challenges that will come on your way. The biggest thing I find in general is that quite a few of my clients, they manage to create that flow, and they're all happy with it. And now the problem comes where it works, but it takes 24 hours to run. That's a bit of a problem. It now needs to be sped up. This is where typical development that you do in Power Automate is I'm adding a step, I'm adding another step, and a few more steps. You got a couple of apply to each loops, and we go, hey, that's all nice, but now it doesn't run fast enough. And just to give you an example, is that you've got an apply to each, and you're processing 1,000 records. You've got some variables inside that apply to each. That will slow your apply to each down. I would, as a golden rule, say if you've got an apply to each and you're processing a lot of records, ignore it for a small number of records. But when you've got high volume, you need to make sure that those variables stay outside the apply to each. Because if you keep them outside the apply to each, now you can enable concurrency. As soon as you use variables inside the apply to each, that will kill off your performance. And there are loads of other options where you've also got, for example, rather than using an apply to each, what you could do is use a select action. The select action is quite often forgotten. And I even think that the name select is totally wrong. What it should be called is reshape your data or something like that. So you've got a complex structure of data, and you actually just want to simplify it. Turn it into properties, put a couple of expressions in it, and it's actually really, really fast. And that makes a massive difference. It can also then avoid having nested apply to each steps and all sorts of things like that. So yeah, I would definitely say performance and understanding the customer's needs. Those are the most important ones.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's certainly the understanding the process, but also making sure that the client understands the process as well, or the person who owns it. A lot of the time they don't, or they think they do. Best thing to do that I've always found from personal experience is get them to write it down, get them to storyboard it, because a lot of the time they aren't written down. And that helps them to cement the understanding. And then if they present that back to you, then actually they talk it through, and they're able to then see where things work and where things don't. Right, we've got a couple of minutes left, and we just had another question just pop in. So this one's from Bala. Thank you for your question. I have noticed a few Power Automate flows being suspended in these past few days. Is there anything going on that you're aware of, or what could actually be causing those suspensions?
Yes, there are basically a number of reasons why Microsoft suspends flows. They basically monitor all of your flows. If it goes wrong, as in a flow fails, it will let you get away with it. If that happens very, very frequently, they will disable your flow or turn it off. And that's basically, well, it can be quite annoying, because imagine if your flow just fails 100 times today, but it's only because it's today, then should they really be turned off? Probably not. But it does happen. I remember a number of years ago, I wrote a blog post on my sharepains.com, and it was about how do I re-enable the flows that have been turned off by Microsoft. I don't know if Microsoft is happy with that, but hey, it does work. And you can basically just reactivate them. And the other reason why you might find suspended flows at the moment is, depending on your license, you have a different number of actions that you can run. I don't know the exact number, but it's something like 10,000, I think, for a non-premium. So if you've got non-premium licenses that you're using, so the seeded license or the included license, it's got all sorts of different names. The one that comes with your 365 license, you can now only have 10,000 steps that you could run. That might sound like a lot, but if you run out of that, they might suspend your flows. Hey, just turn them on and you're good. But that is a manual step. Or you buy premium licenses and the problem goes away as well.
Yeah, so certainly the higher the level of the license. Certainly, if I remember rightly, the per process license, while more expensive, gives you something like somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000 flow runs. So yeah, certainly if it's a high performing flow, then it's probably worthwhile looking at getting the premium license for that, just to make sure that it's not suspending. Or as Peter said, he has got a blog on sharepains.com where you can create a flow to go and turn your flow back on again. Perfect, great. Thank you for your questions, Kaylee and Bala. If you want to talk to us more about those, please do ping us on. I can see you've contacted us on LinkedIn, so please do connect with us. And if you want to carry on that conversation, we'd be happy to do that. But otherwise, that 30 minutes has absolutely flown by once again. So unfortunately, we're out of time. We're going to have to say goodbye for this one.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you again next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Just for everybody's awareness, we're not going to be doing one in April. We're going to let the questions build back up again so we can start to tackle them again. So the next Power Platform First Aid session will be at the end of May. So please do carry on watching the socials for news of that. And yeah, we'll look forward to sharing more information with you and helping you out with more of your issues in the future. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day.